Edge of Fate is finally here, and with all the changes that we're getting to weapons and gear tiering and armor, we've also got some changes to exotic armor. So today we're going to look at 5 exotics that you should definitely be using now that Edge of Fate is here. First exotic is Actium War Rig. Actium War Rig is really old, right? We've had this one for a long time. We all know what it does by now. It reloads your autos and your machine guns over time. It's been in and out of the meta throughout the years. It's a really good exotic, but it kind of needed a little bit of help. Well, Bungie decided to do that. Well, Bungie decided to grant it that help by giving it a damage buff as you get kills, stacking up to 10 times. I'll be curious to see how good that damage buff is, but regardless, stacking that on top of the reload buffs is really nice. And as you build up those damage stacks, you're going to be getting increased stability as well, and also ammo regen. So that's kind of a new one. You're going to be getting some ammo. You're going to be getting damage and performance boosts, but also a chance to generate more ammo. And that's something that's a little bit different with Edge of Fate. That is now something we can build craft into, is generating ammo for ourselves and our teammates. That was really something that was mostly left up to chance. Of course, we had, ammo finders and that kind of stuff, and those were moderately effective, but now there's going to be an ammo meter. You're going to see just how much you'll be generating and how frequently, and Actium War Rig is going to contribute to that. It's always been a pretty fun exotic, steadily reloading your autos and machine guns, but they really boosted the functionality now with some increased ammo regeneration, more damage, more stability, which is something most autos and machine guns struggle with anyways. So I really think this exotic is positioned to do well, and while maybe it won't be the meta per se, I think it'll still be a solid choice. Next up is Crest of Alpha Lupi. In its original state, it's going to grant a healing pulse when you drop your barricade, grant you more orbs from supers. It wasn't really a lot to work with before. It was okay, but in an age where you have other exotics that just do so much, it's a little bare bones. Now with the change in Edge of Fate, casting your barricade is still going to grant that healing, but now dealing damage repeatedly from behind that barricade is going to grant additional healing pulses. It's really not as much a one-off exotic anymore. You don't just cast your barricade and that's it. Now you can cast that barricade, get that healing, but then continue to get that healing as you fight from behind that barricade. I really like that idea, and with builds revolving around Storm's Keep Titan, Bolt Charge, and all that good stuff, getting additional healing from behind a barricade like that sounds really awesome. I know Bolt Charge isn't going to be quite what it used to be because it's not featured in the artifact, and some nerfs have been doled out. Bolt Charge is still going to be solid. I think Storm's Keep Titans are still going to be a really strong option, and Crest of Alpha Lupi providing some additional support there is going to be really fun. But there's also another facet of this Crest of Alpha Lupi change. Healing allies is going to grant class ability energy. Now, obviously the main idea is that behind barricades, if you heal your allies, you're going to be getting your barricade faster. It's going to restore some of that energy, and as you just keep fighting and healing, you're going to get your barricade more and more. But here's the thing, the language doesn't seem super specific. If that includes healing autos as well, that means you can get more class ability just by healing your allies from a distance, really wherever. It's really easy to heal your allies with that healing auto, and that's going to be contributing to class ability energy as well, granting even more sources of healing. So I really like the idea of Crest of Alpha Lupi as a legitimate support exotic. With Rights of the Nine recently, and modes like Ultimatum where you're just desperately trying to survive and keep your allies alive, a legitimate support option for Titans sounds really nice, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this one works out. Now, a little bonus here with Phoenix Cradle. This didn't really make my specific list of 5, but a really interesting change about this one is that granting a solar buff to one of your allies has a chance to create a sunspot. If you're using the healing auto from the Pale Heart, can't remember the name of it, bottom line, it's solar, and it's got a weapon perk that if you heal your allies, it's going to grant them restoration. That's really interesting. That is probably one of the most easy and consistent ways to grant buffs to your allies, and that is specifically a solar buff, and I imagine that's going to proc sunspots from Phoenix Cradle here. Little bonus there, it's not officially on the list here, but Phoenix Cradle also got some interesting changes there, and depending on how often you can create sunspots by providing that restoration, could be a good time. Now next up we have some hunter exotics, and no surprise here, you guys probably all saw this in the TWAB a couple weeks ago, but Dragon's Shadow is getting a big time change, and Speedloader Slacks and Dragon's Shadow are kind of doing a little switch. So Dragon's Shadow is now the PvP version. It's going to now grant passive stability and handling bonuses. I'm sure that's going to be really good. It's kind of like the Ophidia Spades now for hunters, but in addition to those benefits, when you dodge, it's going to be granting you a whole mess of benefits, including increased sprint, slide, and ADS speed, increased handling and stability, and an increased class stat. There is a lot going on for Dragon's Shadow now. It's going to be well worth it. It's still going to reload the weapon that you're holding, which means you could use Gambler's Dodge to restore your melee. Now that you don't have to be near enemies to restore your melee, that's a really interesting combo. So you retain part of the reloading benefits, which is really nice, and also be able to dip into the melee aspect. And so I'm telling you, this is just going to be ubiquitous in PvP. Hunters are going to be using this all the time. I know I will be. It just boosts everything that you need on a weapon, and I love increased abilities. So when you see Dragon Shadow everywhere, don't be surprised. And in my opinion, I think this thing's already going to get smacked with a nerf in, I don't know, maybe a few weeks. I think everyone's going to see this thing so much that they're going to get tired of it, and Bungie's just going to nerf it. But regardless, if you play PvP at all, really good changes here on Dragon Shadow. Don't overlook it. It gives you a lot to work with passively with that increased stability, but then once you use your dodge, there's a lot to work. You get a ton of benefits as well. So definitely give Dragon Shadow a try. Next up is Mask of Bakris. So the changes aren't quite as big as maybe some of the other ones on this list, but the changes that are made are kind of subtle but very important to how the exotic actually works. So it's got a 10% buff now for stasis and arc weapons, and it seems to be that the way that's going to work is that it's going to stack. It's not going to function as a 4x surge mod anymore. So I think the potential here is that while your initial boost to damage isn't quite as good, that your ceiling is a little bit higher and you can potentially get a little bit more damage out of it. I'm sure we're going to see people damage testing this thing all over the place. But another big part of the change is that you can use it on stasis supers as well as arc. So if you have an arc super equipped, you can use Mask of Bakris, which means it's fully functional on just an Arc subclass. Personally, I find that great news. I don't like Stasis Hunter at all in Crucible, but Arc is personally a lot more compelling. So I'm a really big fan of that change for both PvE and PvP. I just like the flexibility of being able to change a little bit. Now, the other thing is that while you have Light Shift, you got that 10-second kind of cooldown. It didn't allow you to get any class ability energy back in that time previously, so the time between dodges was extremely long. Well, now, if you defeat enemies within that period of time of having Light Shift, it'll return some class ability energy to you. So that kind of helps mitigate that really long period of time in between dodges, and if you just get a couple kills, it's going to restore some energy, shorten that time up a little bit, and you'll be able to use it more often. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that works out, and if you guys give it a try, let me know how you like it in the comments. I will say typically I shy away from Mask of Bakris just because of how many times I feel like I've already teleported away, and then I get shot at my original point of teleportation. It's really frustrating, but you know, maybe this will be my chance to use it and make it work. I don't know. Finally, at number 5, we have Speedloader Slacks, and this thing has kind of absorbed some of the functionality of Dragon Shadow, and it's more of the PvE support type role now. So now when you dodge, it's going to reload all of your weapons, kind of like Dragon Shadow did. So they removed that, gave it to Speedloader Slacks, and beyond that, it'll grant you a reload and handling buff for a short time. Of course, you can refresh that by getting final blows, doing another dodge. You can refresh that timer, keep that buff going, so that's nice. Of course, it also retains the ability to give that to allies, so I would imagine in a damage phase, maybe even a day 1 contest, someone with Speedloader Slacks is going to be really important. So you just have that one hunter that dodges and gives everyone a really solid reload buff, just keeps the ammo flying. I know I really appreciate it if there's like a Lunafaction Warlock. Those reloads are just so much faster, and I think Speedloader Slacks might kind of fill that role. Now, one other change that they made is that dealing sustained damage grants class ability energy. So that kind of makes sense, right? It feels like it's just designed for DPS rotations. You can have crazy rotation, just dodge, reload all your weapons all at once, and as you're dealing damage during that DPS rotation, you're just getting energy back for your dodge. You can refresh the timer, reload all your weapons personally, give yourself that reload buff, but then also spread that buff to your allies and keep it up for them. I imagine even in a 30 to 40 second damage phase, you're going to be able to maintain that buff the whole time because of the class ability regen boost here. I really like that change. I feel like it leans perfectly into the whole purpose of Speedloader Slacks, and I'm definitely curious to see if teams are going to use this in the day 1 contest clear for the new raid. Very happy that we're getting some support options, and while it was able to do that before, I think getting that class ability energy back as you deal damage and being able to refresh that timer very easily for your teammates is going to be a huge boost. Of course, there are other exotics. I didn't even mention any Warlock ones. I just wasn't as compelled by them. There are other exotics that were buffed. These are just the top 5 that I think you should be using for Edge of Fate, the top 5 that are going to be the most game changing. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Are these exotic changes really worth it? Are they going to move the needle at all? And if you want to check out a few other changes that were made to some exotic weapons, then check out the video in the end screen. I will be streaming for Edge of Fate. I've also got some giveaway codes for emblems and expansion codes. I'll be streaming today and Wednesday giving out those Edge of Fate codes. So definitely stop by on Twitch, give the channel a follow, and see if you can land yourself a sweet code. Anyway, that'll be all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Catch you guys next time.